Let's talk about a politician taking on big money in politics, a battle that's as old as democracy itself, but one that never seems to lose its appeal. Every election cycle, we hear about candidates who promise to stand up to the wealthy and powerful, to fight for the average citizen, and to restore integrity to a system many believe is broken. It's a story we all want to believe because deep down, we hope that someone will finally tip the scales back in favor of ordinary people. The idea of a lone politician taking on the entrenched interests of Washington is compelling, almost cinematic. Senator John Ossoff of Georgia has made fighting corporate and billionaire money his rallying cry. He's positioned himself as a new kind of leader, one who isn't afraid to call out the influence of dark money and the outsized role of wealthy donors in shaping public policy. He calls it corruption on steroids, painting himself as a champion for the little guy. Ossoff's speeches are filled with passionate pleas for transparency, accountability, and a government that truly serves its people. Ossoff's message is simple: big money is bad, and he's here to stop it. He frames the issue in stark terms, making it clear that the stakes are nothing less than the future of American democracy. He's built his brand on being an outsider, fluent in the language of campaign finance reform. He talks about closing loopholes, ending secret donations, and making sure every voice counts equally, not just those with the deepest pockets. This stance resonates with voters tired of feeling like their government is for sale. People from all walks of life, frustrated by years of broken promises, see in Ossoff a glimmer of hope that things might finally change. It's a promise of reform, a pledge to restore fairness to a rigged system. Ossoff's campaign is built on the idea that democracy should work for everyone, not just the privileged few. The narrative is powerful. Ossoff, the warrior against the forces of wealth distorting our democracy. He's cast himself as the underdog, the fighter who won't back down, no matter how tough the opposition. He wants you to believe he's different, on your side against special interests. He shakes hands, listens to concerns, and promises to put people before profits. It's a great story, one that gives people hope. It's the kind of narrative that inspires volunteers, energizes supporters, and makes headlines. But as with all great stories, there's a twist. Because politics, like life, is rarely as simple as it seems on the surface. The next part is where things get awkward. Sometimes, the reality behind the curtain doesn't quite match the inspiring speeches and bold promises. Because sometimes, the hero's actions don't quite match the legend. The line between fighting big money and benefiting from it can get blurry, even for the most well-intentioned crusaders. And that's where our story really begins, at the intersection of hope and reality, where the true test of character unfolds. Here's the twist. While John Ossoff stands before crowds, denouncing the outsized influence of billionaires in American politics, calling for a government that truly represents the people, there's a less publicized side to his campaign. Behind the scenes, his campaign has eagerly accepted the very money he warns against, quietly building a war chest with the help of the ultra-wealthy. According to Federal Election Commission records, Ossoff's campaigns have received nearly $500,000 from billionaire donors since 2017, a staggering sum that reveals just how much billionaire cash is flowing into his coffers. That's not pocket change, it's a mountain of cash that could have come from thousands of regular people, each giving a few dollars. Instead, it's bundled up in massive checks from the nation's richest. In 2025 alone, Ossoff has already taken over $154,000 from the country's wealthiest individuals, attending exclusive fundraisers and private events where access is granted to those who can afford to give big. His donor list reads like a who's who of American billionaires, more than 70 different ultra-wealthy individuals, each with their own interests and agendas, now have a stake in his political future. This isn't a one-time occurrence or a fluke, it's a consistent pattern, repeated across multiple election cycles, showing a clear reliance on big money to fuel his ambitions. The contradiction is glaring. How can you claim to fight billionaire influence while cashing their checks and relying on their support to stay competitive? For many voters, it's the kind of hypocrisy that fuels deep cynicism about politics, making them question whether any candidate can truly be trusted to stand up to the powerful. When the gap between campaign rhetoric and reality grows this wide, trust doesn't just erode, it collapses, leaving voters feeling betrayed and disillusioned. The crusade against big money starts to look less like a principled stand and more like a clever marketing strategy, designed to win votes while quietly courting the wealthy behind closed doors. In reality, Ossoff's campaign is powered by the very forces he claims to oppose, with luxury and influence never far from the heart of his operation. The image of the noble knight fighting for the people starts to fade, replaced by a more complicated picture, one where the knight has some very wealthy backers standing just out of sight, and that's a problem his campaign can't easily explain away. No matter how many speeches are given or promises are made, the story just got a lot more complicated, raising tough questions about integrity, influence, and who really holds the power in American politics. So, who are these billionaire backers? When you peel back the curtain on political fundraising, you find a cast of characters that reads like a Forbes cover story. These aren't just wealthy individuals, they're the power brokers who shape industries, influence policy, and, increasingly, steer the direction of American politics. The donor list reads like a tech and finance all-star roster, with names that echo through Silicon Valley boardrooms and Wall Street trading floors alike. These are the people whose decisions can move markets and whose support can make or break a campaign. There's the Soros family, known for their global philanthropy and political activism. Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, brings the weight of big tech. And LinkedIn's Reid Hoffman, a venture capitalist with deep pockets and deeper connections, is also on the list. Add to that a mix of media moguls, hedge fund managers, and industry titans. These are not casual millionaires writing a check for good measure. They're strategic donors, often with specific interests and agendas who expect a seat at the table. Their donations, even when capped by campaign finance laws, are a lifeline for any campaign hoping to compete on the national stage. But the optics? For a candidate running on an anti-big money platform, they're nothing short of problematic. It's hard to rail against the influence of tech giants and Wall Street financiers while simultaneously accepting their money. The contradiction is glaring, and it doesn't go unnoticed by voters or the media. Many of these donors have business before Congress, raising persistent questions about access, influence, and the true cost of campaign contributions. Are these donations a show of support or an investment in future policy outcomes? In 2025, Ossoff even featured billionaire Governor J.B. Pritzker in a fundraising email. A move that raised eyebrows among progressives and critics alike, who questioned the sincerity of his anti-billionaire stance. Using one billionaire to raise money from others. That's a bold strategy for someone positioning themselves as a crusader against the billionaire class. It blurs the line between outsider and insider, reformer and beneficiary. The donor list fundamentally undermines Ossoff's anti-big money message, casting doubt on whether real change is possible when campaigns are fueled by the very interests they claim to oppose. It's a contradiction that's hard to ignore, and for many voters, it's a reminder that in American politics, money still talks, loudly. Ossoff's defense: he doesn't take corporate PAC money. Sounds principled, but it's a sleight of hand. He still takes big checks from tech executives and industry leaders, just not from the company's PAC. The effect is the same corporate power, laundered through personal donations. It's a loophole many politicians exploit to claim grassroots purity. Open Secrets shows Ossoff's top individual donors are from tech giants. He also takes money from other PACs, lawyers, lobbyists, business groups. The No Corporate PAC pledge is a narrow ban, not a rejection of special interest money. It's a carefully crafted shield, full of holes up close. The campaign claims the moral high ground, but the fundraising game continues as usual. The irony peaks when Ossoff is endorsed by End Citizens United, a group fighting to get big money out of politics. Ossoff calls Citizens United a cancer on our democracy, while his campaign is padded by billionaire cash. The endorsement lets him run as a reformer, even as his fundraising tells a different story. For the group, it's pragmatic, better a flawed ally than an outright opponent. But for voters, it's confusing and cynical. When the watchdog endorses the rule breaker, the fight against big money starts to look like theater. The contradiction is impossible to miss. Symbols matter more than substance in DC, and that's a problem. The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. Ossoff's campaign touts its small-dollar donors, an average of $36 from over 233,000 people. It's a great story, a grassroots movement powered by regular folks. But that's only half the truth. The bulk of campaign cash comes from big donors writing maximum checks. One maxed-out donor equals 183 small donors. Campaigns need both, the narrative of people power and the reality of big money. While the campaign celebrates small donors, it quietly courts the wealthy behind closed doors. Modern campaigns are too expensive to run on small donations alone. The two-track strategy is standard. Publicize the grassroots, rely on the elite. Both are happening, but you only hear about one. The full picture is far less inspiring. Ideally, a Georgia senator would be funded by Georgians, but Ossoff's campaign is fueled by out-of-state money, 80% from places like California, New York, and D.C. Most maxed-out donors are from wealthy coastal areas, not Georgia. This isn't new, but it's getting worse. The out-of-state share has grown since his first race. Opponents use this to paint him as a national candidate, not a local one. It raises questions about who he really represents, Georgia voters or wealthy donors elsewhere. The perception is damaging in a competitive state. When most of your money comes from outside, it's hard to claim you're fighting for the people at home. The disconnect is real and politically risky. It's a vulnerability his opponents won't ignore. Some say, this is just how politics works, everyone takes big money. But Ossoff built his brand on being different. The issue isn't just taking the money, it's the hypocrisy of claiming to fight it while doing the same. This double standard poisons public trust. When reformers play the same game, voters lose faith in everyone, cynicism grows, turnout drops, and the system gets worse. Ossoff's actions feed the very disillusionment he claims to fight. In a divided state like Georgia, he needs to inspire, yet his contradictions make that harder. His opponents have an easy attack line, and his supporters have a tough time defending him. The gap between words and actions is a gift to his critics. So, where does this leave voters? With a tough choice and a lot of questions, is Ossoff a pragmatist playing a dirty game for a greater good, or a hypocrite using reform as a slogan? The problem isn't just Ossoff, it's a symptom of a broken system. The cost of running for office forces even good candidates into bad compromises. Voters must decide, who will their senator really listen to, constituents or donors? Ossoff's story is a cautionary tale about how fundraising warps politics. The answer isn't to give up, but to demand more transparency, consistency, and real reform. Until the system changes, we'll keep seeing noble crusades quietly bankrolled by the very forces they claim to fight.